So continuing all this, folks, if Putin misbehaves, Mr. Trump can completely turn off his economic and monetary spigots. And that's the subject of the riff. Right this moment, President Trump meeting with Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. Like everybody, I hope the meeting goes well. And I hope Putin agrees to a ceasefire as the first step to a peace deal that would end the Russia-Ukraine war. If anybody can negotiate an end to the war, Mr. Trump can. As I've said, Trump comes to this meeting with the wind at his back. He's had a remarkable, successful domestic policy achievements at home and abroad, and internationally obliterated Iran and his extraordinary success in reordering world trade. All that has made him the best known, most powerful, and most popular person on the planet. But I doubt that Vladimir Putin sees it this way. The ex-KGB agent is a megalomaniac who wants to extend what he believes is some kind of historical Russian empire. He doesn't much care that he's been murdering civilian men, women, and children, or their homes, or their hospitals. He doesn't much care that at least 300,000 have died in this war. 300,000. He's bringing in mercenary troops from North Korea and China and other communist or despotic countries to wage this insane war. Putin thought he could just invade Ukraine and capture Kiev in a couple months, take control of all the land. But it turns out he very badly miscalculated. And he has no interest in all this lost blood or treasure. I say this not to state the obvious, but to underscore my personal view that Putin's completely untrustworthy and will do anything to distract from a real ceasefire or a permanent peace deal. And folks, I sincerely hope I'm wrong. And I completely support what President Trump is trying to do. Trump is the peacemaker. Putin is the war criminal. But all that said, President Trump on the plane to Alaska, he talks about the consequences if Putin misbehaves like he always does. Please take a listen.
You had said earlier this week that Putin would face severe consequences if you get the sense from him that he's not interested. What do you mean by that?
Economically severe. Yes, it will be very severe. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I don't need it.
All right, if Putin does misbehave, President Trump has an arsenal of trade and financial weapons that will choke off and totally ruin what's left of the Russian economy. It's a one-horse economy just based on oil and gas. So, Mr. Trump can first significantly hike tariffs on anybody who purchases Russian oil or other Russian goods. Now, he's already punished India for buying Russian oil by slapping a 25% tariff on Indian sales to the U.S., on top of an earlier 25% tariff. You could raise that to 100%. China's a big buyer of Russian oil and their goods, and they should not be immune to a major tariff hike. In other words, you want to do business with Russia, well, then you cannot do business with the United States. And then there's the secondary sanctions. Same idea. You buy Russian oil or other commodities, you cannot do any business with the United States. In other words, we're saying not only are we sanctioning your businesses with Russia, the secondary sanctions mean any businesses with the U.S. And financially, we can enforce this. Yes, we can. We can enforce this by blowing Russia completely out of the world dollar payments system. Follow me here, please. First, there's the SWIFT messaging ledger. All dollar payments, including all the international banks, must be recorded on this ledger. So we will know right away who's helping Russia. Then we can actually prevent the transaction. That is, the actual payment could be prevented. We do that through the Federal Reserve wire, which is the actual payment system. If U.S. or foreign banks want to sneak through a Russian-related payment, they could be denied access to the Fed wire, which shuts down the transaction. The Swiss system and the Fed wire are, of course, dollar-based, but over 90% of world trading transactions are dollar-based, either directly or indirectly. You know, think of China, India. They can talk what they want, but the reality is one way or another, they're going to pay through dollars. So President Trump can basically turn Russia's economy and financial water off. He can close the Russian spigot. Does Putin know this? Well, I don't know. But he will shortly find out if he doesn't make a deal with President Trump. And that's the riff. All right.